All right, so we're back with Laura Brand, and she's been busy working on her book, and she's going to try to get a hold of someone who lived at the Scott Motel at the same time as Bittaker did. So we're going to try. She's going to try calling him and see if he'll talk to us. When was the last time you talked to him?
A couple weeks ago. He has picked up the phone every single time except for the two times we've been recording.
Okay. Well, maybe leave him a text, see if he can call you back, and then we can kind of move on from there. And
yes,
because it definitely would be interesting to hear his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, he has a couple stories. He knew Dina and Tina, who were at the Scott. Yeah. And the reason I called him a couple weeks ago is because Serial Killer X used to hang out at the Scott Motel.
Get out. At the same time?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Did he know Larry?
He knows Dina and he knows Tina. They were in the same class. What was it? John Muir Middle School.
Got it. So he went to school with them.
He went to school with them, but he was also hanging out at the Scott Motel. But I mean, everybody in Burbank, like this was a teenage hangout spot. And he remembers two guys and he remembers one with a camera. And he doesn't know if that could be Bittaker and Norris. So we've been trying to.
Sounds like Bittaker. Wasn't the Bittaker was the photographer, the two?
Always had a camera.
Yeah. So how old? So he would have been what? Like.
Would have been 13, 14.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
It's really crazy. And I mean, Bittaker was indoctrinating the teenagers there, some of the males already. I mean, doing grooming behaviors of playing, the audio tapes to them.
What a tiny little slice of hell that little hotel was.
I know.
And it's still there.
I know. And it's like frozen in time too.
I know. It's weird.
It's crazy.
I wonder what other kind of illegal activities went on in that hotel.
Oh, I'm sure like tons of stuff. I mean, it's like a no-tell motel.
I know. And it's just like, it doesn't look like they've, like you said, it's frozen in time. It doesn't look like they've done anything to, you know, wonder if has it always been the same owners?
Yeah. Same owners too.
Wow.
It's been run by a family from China and it's still just been kind of like passed down
to
the families. Yeah.
And it's just probably just a huge tax write-off for them.
I think so. Yeah. They sold it in 2020. It was like going to go on sale for $5 million, but they turned it down.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, because property in LA, it can be like a shack and still be worth money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's right on San Fernando. Right there. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It runs parallel with the 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pass it all the time. Every time I go to Burbank, see it on the right-hand side.
I know.
There's a few of those tiny little, rot gut motels on there.
Yeah. Yeah. The serial killers love them.
Well, yeah, because they know no one's of consequence is going to be there. Most people are just going to drive past them. Most people that are hanging out there are kind of, they're dealing with a lot of other issues other than just hanging out there. The substance abuse and, and other things.
Right.
What did Serial Killer X say about that place?
I mean, it was a party spot. That's where they were going to drink, do drugs. Yeah. I mean, if you were going to do something, away from the parents at that age or, drink or experiment with drugs, that's where you were going to go, the Scott Motel.
Wow. I'm glad I lived in the suburbs of New Jersey where we just went out into the woods with a keg.
Just went to the beach.
Didn't involve any adults in motels.
Weirdness.
Yeah, weird guys. Well, it was also right next to that liquor store which was named Roy's Liquor. So in like Bittaker's room was like right here. So his like back wall was facing that parking lot for the liquor store, convenience store. So literally, I'm talking probably not even 20 feet he is away from that whole parking lot where he could just watch for teenagers going in or looking for beer or whatever right there.
Yeah. And that was his main primary residence?
Yeah. Well, he moved into the Alexandria downtown when he first got out.
Mm-hmm.
And then he later moved into the Scott Motel.
Wow.
He always lived in the motels, which is interesting because we know from where he grew up, in Florida, he was at that motel with his adoptive parents, with the tool salesman up the street.
Yeah. And he made a decent living, so thing was probably pennies.
Oh, yeah.
He was probably paying what, like weekly or?
Yeah, something like nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was making a ton of money.
Wow.
No, he could have easily bought a house, like a nice house at that time.
What happened to how much did his money ever what happened to it? Did he use it up on lawyers' fees after he got arrested?
I think he used a lot of it on lawyers' fees. His money is kind of a mystery too, because, he was also selling drugs too, him and Norris, copious amounts too. I know he buried a lot of it too. In that buried stash, he put a lot of, I know he had 10 grand in one shoebox he got rid of. He kept a lot of cash on him. But there's really no trail where the rest of his money went. I mean, he was living in that motel for nothing. He ate like a bird. It wasn't like he was going out to, having fancy dinners or anything. And, gas was nothing back then, even though around, and he had that van paid off, so
he didn't really have any expenses.
No.
Wow.
No. Yeah.
Really? Did he ever? I mean, I'm sure he explained a lot of this, and we've talked a lot about him, but I can't remember if we talked about what his daily routine was.
He would go, if he was working, he would go to this diner up the street, and he started dating a waitress at this diner, and age appropriate waitress too. And I always wondered if maybe she was kind of like a beard for him. So he went and got breakfast at the same place every morning. Then he would go to work, and then he would typically go hang out with Norris or go back to the motel and hang out with the teenagers. And then on the weekends, that's when typically, if they did get they would go up to the mountains.
That's weird. Did he ever talk about the waitress? How long did he date this waitress?
Couple months.
Oh, so it's not that long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there like when he would date someone for in a period like that, a couple months? I mean, did they ever talk about how it would end as far as the relationship, or like whether or not the woman would be like, this is not going anywhere, or you're a weirdo, or how did he kind of deal with that?
Waitress, he never talked about why it ended, but they're in the police report when they interviewed her. She said that Bittaker had showed up crazy, angry. She had a guy over, and somehow he knew he must have been like following her.
Yeah.
And threw a fit, and she told him to leave, and he got like all aggressive and violent, trying to beat the guy up, like on her front steps. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not surprising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So in relation to your book now that you've done kind of like your first pass, right?
Yeah.
And so now you've handed it in, correct?
Handing
in. So you're just still waiting.
Just waiting on the contract. Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
It's a lot, having to dive back into Bittaker so extensively again. And I had to redo a couple of the chapters. And of course, the 2 chapters I had to redo were the murder chapters. So I had to go through that experience again. But then I also have book 2 I'm going to start working on right away. But it's a lot. I mean, even going through that discovery of Bittaker and Norris, I mean, you can only stomach about maybe 2 or 3 pages before you literally have to take a mental break from like what you're reading. it gets that graphic and that dark. And these are just like formal police reports.
Yeah, it's just the facts. It's just details.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah. It's wild. If some of the stuff is just crazy too, because it doesn't even seem real. Like when you see like the floor plans for the compound and everything they were planning, you're just like, and I mean, it's so meticulous, and you're like, how is any of this real? Like these two sickos were going to really carry out this master plan, and they had already got the van, and they were building up for, the underground compounds and everything they wanted to do. It really is like a horror movie. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It's almost like Saw.
Yeah.
Think of.
At any point when you were talking to him, obviously when, for the years you were talking to him, did they have any like contingency? I mean, because they're both smart men, Bittaker, pretty bright man, sadistic and, killer's way. But did you ever talk about having like a red pill moment? Like if all things go south, what they were going to plan on doing?
Yeah, they actually, funny enough, and there's a recording of them in the back of a squad car. Their initial plan was going to be suicide by cop. That was their initial plan. And then
suicide by cop. What do you mean?
It means that they're going to attack the cops, engage them to the point where they'll kill the cop. Will kill him.
Yeah.
Try to grab his gun or point a gun at the cop.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
It was going to be a shoot off. Is how they had planned it. Yeah.
So, but it didn't work out that way. I mean,
No. No, Norris was arrested right at his house, and Bittaker was arrested coming out of the shower at the Scott Motel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And then when they were in the back of the squad car, they had put them together and put a tape recorder so they could hear him talking. And it's really bizarre because what did they say to each other? They talked about grabbing each other's hand. They weren't going to snitch each other out, but they're saying it kind of in code. And it ends by them saying, well, I'm going to jump off the building. And they say to each other, well, I'm going to hold your hand and we'll jump off together, brother, or something like that.
Wow. You've heard that recording?
No, I have the transcript of it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like they said they were going to jump off the building hand in hand. And then I think it was like 2 days later that Norris gave.
Yeah.
That didn't last very long, brother.
That heroic moment, romantic moment between two serial killers kind of got shattered when he's like, well, I'm going to point the finger at him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He did it. I was there.
Relationship, like just reading that recording, I don't even know what it sounds like them speaking it to each other, but just reading it was bizarre. Like it really does show their twisted relationship. Like that soulmate. It's like, yeah, I'm going to hold your hand. We're going to jump off this building together and do it together. And even like the letters they wrote to each other, like after the trial, was like the same type of dynamic. Like Norris is like, I'm going to recant and get you off the death row, and I'll be on death row with you. Like that was their next plan, was to get Norris onto death row with him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Norris didn't even blink. He flipped on him in a second.
He did. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what they had done, which was a really smart move, I think this was Paul Bynum's tactic. They had gotten all the information from Joe Jackson, and the information they had, obtained from Joe Jackson, they had told Norris it was coming directly from Larry. Larry's talking. And then they did, vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they thought the other one was snitching on the other one.
Right.
Yeah. And later, of course, it comes out it was Joe had come forward.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That slippery guy.
Yeah. Very slippery.
Yeah. When was your last attempt to try to contact him?
I spoke to him about a year ago. I think it was maybe a little bit over a year ago. Yeah.
I would imagine he's in your book.
He is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah. I think he's going to be more in book 2, but he's in book 1 too. Yeah. Because I mean, the book starts out, chapter 2 starts out, when they're meeting in prison.
Got it.
Joe's there. Richard Shootman's there, who's kind of like the silent partner who's getting, the photographs of the victims and all the girls sent back to him from Bittaker and Norris. And it's even weirder because Norris ends up in Donovan, in San Diego, and that's where Shootman was. So after, they plan these attacks, get out, do them later in life, Shootman and Roy end up back together in Donovan.
Full circle.
Full circle. Yeah. It's
I wonder why they put them back and with people that or they even think about that.
I don't even think they thought about it.
Just throw them in there and they just kind of gravitate to each other.
Yeah, I feel like they just move them around, the CDRC so much. I know they try to, with gang rivals and stuff like that. But I don't know if they would check something like with Norris and Shootman, even though I could see that being missed because, it was really State versus Bittaker because, Norris got the deal. So there might have not been on anything on record connecting Shootman with Norris, really.
What do you think the fascination is with Bittaker?
You mean like why people?
Yeah.
I think, he has a very Hannibal Lecter vibe to him, that genius serial killer. And I think people like that type, like the Ted Bundy type, that's just like, or who seems very intelligent or gives that illusion of intelligence, who's able to con everybody around them and kind of like that evil mastermind. Because when we look at, predators, like apex predators, like sharks, we have a whole week, studying sharks. This is survival's kicking in, our survival instincts. And, a serial killer is a human. It's us, but it's almost like a monster in disguise. So of course we want to understand, who they are, what makes them tick, their hunting methods, all of that. And I think that's where the big, fascination for true crime comes. We want to understand this apex predator.
Yeah. How could another human do this to another human just
right?
Randomly. Obviously you talk about crimes of passion. People can understand that, something happens like that, but to kind of target a stranger just for your own prurient interests and, to get off is definitely something that is doesn't seem natural.
No.
I think that's the scariest part of it, though, is that you don't know. That's what was so interesting when we did the DNA stuff with Cindy, is that what attracts these serial killers to their victims? Is it something genetic? Do they recognize them? Like, what is it? Is it just random? I think that's the thing that we want to understand so much is, could it possibly just be random? Or is it something else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there is something primal about it. I think, every human has the ability to kill. It's part of our survival instincts, but not in the way a serial killer. Like, we're supposed to reproduce and preserve our species, amongst the planet. So what they're doing is the opposite of that. They're killing off, especially women who bring, life into this world. So it's almost like a maladaptive form. Possibly that's one of the theories. I think it's really complex. I think it's really interesting, but I think there's definitely primal undertones to it. And especially because we get those feelings, those gut feelings, that energy, and that's our primal instinct kicking in. So how is that able to detect them? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like what we've discovered in talking to all the, serial killers on this podcast, and what you've shared with us, it's a lot of it has to deal with control.
Yeah.
It's like they don't feel like they don't have any control, and this is the only control that they can kind of master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that comes from a lack of control, typically from their childhood. That can come in many forms if they were moved around a lot, or they're just something about their environment, if it was abusive or anything of that nature, neglectful. They're always going to want that control in adulthood, to control the environment, the people around them. And they go to the extreme levels of, taking victims, holding them captive, binding them, torture, type of stuff. And I think I've talked about that with the captives too, is I found with a lot of the serial killers, a lot of the mothers had abandoned them. And this was a replica of how to, obtain love, was to hold somebody hostage. As twisted as it all sounds, it's the way their minds are working.
Excuse me.
Wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever spoken to John Douglas at all?
Actually, about Bittaker.
What did he say?
I went to a show in New York he was doing, and we had met after for a drink. And the first thing he said to me, he was like, "You got in a cage with Lawrence Bittaker?" And I was like, "Well, you talk to him." And he's like, "I would never get in a cage with him." Because they get that big room at San Quentin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did he say he would never get in a cage with him?
He said he's the worst serial killer he's ever come across.
Wow. And he was like, I think he sat with Kemper, didn't he?
Yeah.
He sat with a lot of them.
Kemper was pretty docile, though. He was pretty. I could see why Bittaker would be.
Yeah, but it's just massive.
Yeah, that's true. He is like massive.
He's docile because he knows at any moment he can snap you.
Yeah.
That was like when I was there with you at San Quentin, and we were talking to David Carpenter, and I think it was Chester Turner was in the cage right behind us. Another one, massive human being.
Massive, yeah.
It's just like, you just look at this. That to me is just.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are like, there's been times at San Quentin I've literally had to tilt my head like all the way back just to reach their eye length. I mean, they're really crazy big. And as funny as it is to say, actually the shorter ones that scare me more. I feel like the ones that it's almost like the Napoleon syndrome. Like, sadistic, the shorter they are, like they have more to prove.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I can see that though.
Yeah.
I've
noticed that with them. Yeah.
I mean, but to have that physical nature, like, I with Chester Turner, he's got to be like 6'3", 6'4", probably pushing 300 pounds. That's a lot of mass there, in addition to, and then to being overpowering, a woman, it just,
Oh yeah. Like even a guy wouldn't stand a chance against
the
size of these guys. I mean,
but their targets most of the time are women, or almost. So it makes it even more.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wouldn't stand a chance. I mean, these guys are huge. Like I put my hand up to theirs, and I mean, it's literally like a baby's hand up to them. Like they really are kill you with like snap you like a twig, really.
That's crazy. That's interesting how.
So when you told him that you went in the cage, what did he ask you? Was he just like?
He was just incredulous because he was just like, how could you? He was just like, I can't believe you would do that. I'm too scared to get in a cage with Bittaker. And then we just kind of swapped some like stories about Bittaker, like about Bittaker. But he had said like Bittaker hadn't told him anything. Like Bittaker was like, I'm innocent. It's all Norris. And I was like, well, he told me something different. And then we talked about, just kind of like pretty much the toolbox most of the time. And then I think a couple other cases. Yeah.
I mean, because they just came out, I think they're just coming out with another installment of Making of a Mind of a Murder.
Actually, I think Bittaker called me when I was having a drink with him too.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm almost positive. Because I remember him wanting to, when I was with him and Dr. Stone, Bittaker had wanted to speak to both of them. He had a bone to pick with Dr. Stone because he didn't like Dr. Stone's rating, because Dr. Stone has a rating of like most evil, like that scale. And the highest level is number 22. And that's somebody who, it's like a torture murderer, which is exactly what Bittaker and Norris are.
To explain to the audience what the Dr. Stone rating system is again.
He calls it's his own scale, but it's from 1 to 22, and it's every level is kind of different. So like, I don't know the scale like offhand, but something like there's a TV show about it, but 5 would be like a passion murder. Like maybe you walk in on, your significant other having an affair and kill that person, that's like a number, you're rated a number 5. That's a passion kill.
Yeah.
Scale goes all the way up to 22. So 22 is a torture murder, which is what Bittaker and Norse do. You know, you torture them for long periods of time, that kind of stuff. So Bittaker was appropriately given a level 22. And he said, no, I talked to Dr. Stone and he had lowered it. And I said, I just watched his presentation. You're still at number 22, because Bittaker was actually in Stone's presentation. And I was like, no, you're still at 22. And he was like, I want to talk to Stone about lowering my level.
It's like a credit report for him.
Yes. And I was like, Larry, I agree with his assessment. I think you are where you need to be on that scale. Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, it is interesting because they don't want to perceive themselves as who they are.
No, and this is his thing. He always said, like, if I give up more, it's like I'm going to be a different level. I'm going to be the monster. He would always say that, I don't want to be the monster. And I was like, you already are. You're already there. Like Is it because you think their brain just cannot conceive the notion of what they actually are doing, that they split it off so that it's separated?
Yeah, it's compartmentalized in this box.
That like,
yeah, it's their action. It's not them. You know, it's something they did, but it's not a part of them. Is how they really view it.
That's psychotic.
Yeah, but here's where the question comes in: is that them compartmentalizing, or is this a true delusion?
Right.
And this is what John and I have talked about. Is this really a delusion, or is this really just compartmentalization?
I think it's a delusion. I think it's their brain that just kind of cracks in half, and they're just like, this side's going to say we did it, this side's going to say we don't do that.
Which is interesting because of how the left and the right brain works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really...
Yeah, but his delusion got diluted as he was getting closer to death, because he started fearing death. And I think that's when he realized that he's about to meet his maker, and that, you know, he's going to get the ultimate question answered on, you know, what's going to happen to him. And, you know, so, and I think that is his intelligence kind of overriding his delusion. Yeah. Because you can only be deluded. I mean, like you said in the beginning, he just, you know, he was spoon feeding you stuff, and you had to, you know, it wasn't until, you know, many sessions with him where he actually was starting to be honest with you. And for someone like that to kind of harbor all that information, you know, just because he wanted to be seen a certain way, is, well, that's your ego, number one. And number two, it's just like he doesn't want to give that up, because that's like his reason for it's control, and it's the reason why you keep on coming back.
Right.
You know, because he gives you, like, you know, what we've said before as far as giving locations and stuff like that. He can't give it to you in the first one, because otherwise you won't come back, and he doesn't have anybody coming to see him. So there's like basic human needs that he needs to fit. And, you know, Dr. Alan, I forget his last name, Dr. Alan Pass.
Yeah.
Dr. Alan Pass said that. He goes, it's all about their needs.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Fulfilling their needs. You know, now that he's a caged person, or was at the time, he was fulfilling those needs with you. But outside the cage, before he was caught, he was fulfilling his needs by, you know, luring unsuspecting people into his trap, and doing what he wanted to do with them. Yep.
And God, we haven't had him on the show yet. But even Mark and I have had a conversation about this, about how, you know, once they're in that cage, once they're in prison, those traits, I mean, those predator traits, they don't disappear once they're in prison. They just kind of manifest in different ways. So they'll start like snitching on some of the guys to gain control over them, or, you know, favors with the CEO, or they'll start doing little things to gain control within the prison. So they just displace it in different areas, even within prison.
Well, yeah, they're not the baddest men in the planet anymore. When you're in those facilities, there's a lot of bad people in there, and, you know, and very capable of controlling them physically and mentally, you know. So it's like they're not. It's not an even out in the open. When they're not in prison. I mean, they have the advantage of the being cloaked with people just assuming they're a regular person. But inside prison, people already know who they are, and they're obviously. Now that there's no death row, a lot of these guys are high value targets. And if someone wants to get a name for himself, someone who's never getting out of prison they'll take him out just to gain status.
Yeah, they will. Yeah. There's been quite a number of murders so far just in 2025, within the California prison system. And 2 visitors have been killed this year so far.
Really? Where?
I'd have to look up the 2 names, but
is it like during visitation they were killed during a visitation?
One was a wife. I don't know what the other one was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw that correctional officer that we were talking to, that you were talking to, that came out publicly, that kind of basically quit being a correctional officer. He's been doing the TikTok rounds.
Yeah.
In interviews, so it's like. It's a sad state of affairs behind the California's, prisons.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, these guys. I mean, they don't pay them next to anything, and they're
risking their lives. I mean,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
There was just today. There was in another state. I can't remember what it was, but there was 2 correctional officers that were stabbed.
Yeah.
In another state. So it's like.
I mean, you had some serious. To go in there with Bittaker the first time, which always is so impressive to me. I mean, every time I think of that, I just can't even believe it because you're so tiny and you're so cute. And it's like, I just can't even imagine what was going through your mind when you walked into that cage.
Even going back for the book, like I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, because I was 26.
I know. That's what I'm saying, with no fear.
26 and pregnant.
I wasn't pregnant,
No,
but 20, my first, 30, I was pregnant, but 26 was like the first time I was in San Quentin and with Bittaker. But that was my first time. But I look back now at 26 years old. I see a 26-year-old. I'm like, oh my God, it was a baby going up against
A monster.
Yeah.
Well, I think probably, we all do stuff when we're younger that if we had known now what we know then, we probably wouldn't have done it. I've been same thing, it's like,
I know, but that is just crazy.
It is
and I
crazy.
think it's just because you had no fear is why he responded to you. Had you gone in there with fear, forget it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was a therapist there at San Quentin. She was blonde and she refused to treat him, refused to go near him. And I think that was like one of the first things he had said in the cage, or one of our first times. He was saying, this therapist won't come near me because she has blonde hair. And he's like, but you have blonde hair and you're in the cage with me. And I just said, should I be scared of you? And just like asked him directly. And he's like, no. And I was like, okay, because I'm not. And then we just like continued the conversation. But it was almost like he was like, why aren't you scared? I think it was almost, it wasn't even like a sadistic trick. It was almost like he was saying, everybody's scared of me. More curious of like, why aren't you scared?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they smell fear. I mean, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
there is a certain amount of that. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I've been in enough prisons doing documentaries. I mean, and every single time I was there was something went down, like in the yard, when I was in the yard, or inside a facility where, the hospital was always a hotbed, the infirmary, where they would just pop off and crazy stuff would happening. But, it's like, at any time, like I said, like, when you go in there and you've signed this form millions of times, they're just, they're not gonna, you basically waive all your rights.
Yeah.
Your bodily rights.
Mm-hmm.
That, and they even say in the document saying that, should the inmates take over the facility and they hold you hostage, we won't negotiate for your life.
Right.
That's like, I mean, I don't know, and it's happened. These things happens where they get people inside, civilian workers who have been held hostage, and correctional officers have been held hostage. So
I've had friends who are getting their doctorates, in forensic psychology, and almost all of them have stories.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
A couple of them have been in riots, locked in cells. I mean,
yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
oh yeah, and it happens so quick. I remember, being in the yard in Corcoran, and and they, it just happened so quick, and then they all the prisoners and the inmates have to hit the ground, and anybody who's not an inmate still standing, that's who they shoot at.
Yeah.
They'll shoot them out with, tasers or rubber bullets or wooden bullets, and sometimes not even wooden bullets if it doesn't subside. So it's like anything can happen in that yard, because there's probably only about a handful of correctional officers, most of which are on towers of above.
Right.
But you're on the yard, you're outnumbered like 50-1.
Oh yeah. Oh
So,
yeah.
well,
See, I sent you an audio tape. It needs to be enhanced, but I was on the phone during one of the shootouts at San Quentin, and I mean, you can hear the bullets like flying and the guns going off, and I mean, it sounds like a war zone in the background.
Yeah.
So scary.
Mm-hmm.
After reading your book again and doing edits and everything, what is your biggest takeaway from it?
Oh God, there's so much.
I know, it's really a lot. I mean, it really is an intense book.
It is. God, I don't know, because it's like,
well, just thinking about Bittaker and doing your research on him, and studying him while he was alive, what is the thing that you learned that you didn't expect to learn about him?
What was like the most surprising? I would have to say probably the most surprising is at the very end, like how he switched like that, because I had seen the monster. I'd seen the sadistic nature come in when he's talking about the crimes I had seen for years, the monster. And then at the end, at death, that switch that Alan and I had talked about on his episode, because he's seen it with the serial killer when they're on their deathbed and they have that realization, they're going to die. And now they have to come to terms with everything they've done. That is something I don't even know how to put into words, because it's really profound to even see for anybody, but to see a serial killer go through it. I feel like I've learned so much from that, and going forward with working with them from this point on, I always have that story to go back to is you are going to get to this point. This is going to happen to you. We all die. None of us are making out of here alive. And this is his experience. And I got to sit there and see it. So you know what? You should do the right thing now. And that's what I do when I go into the prison now is, I talk about Bittaker and that point he got to and try to get there faster, to give up the locations and have that, dam break quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if it wasn't for you, he would have never gotten to that point. He probably just would have died with all that repressed shit. And, he may have had that moment right up into the last moment of his consciousness, but you gave him that opportunity to think about this stuff for a long time beforehand.
Yeah.
Because you uncorked a lot of it. So you made him face his reality as opposed to living in his delusion.
That's true. And I think one of the inmates at San Quentin even said that. He said, you really are like a mirror going in there and just holding up a mirror. And realistically, I mean, that's what it is. That's what I'm doing is I'm going in with a mirror and holding it up to them.
Yeah.
Yep. And they got to stare straight at it through your eyes.
And it's scary.
Yeah, because they don't want to see it. They want to pretend they didn't do it.
Right.
They don't want to live with it. Even there, they don't want to live with who they are.
Yeah.
That's the part that's always so interesting to me. It's like, how could you do these horrendous crimes? I mean, the most sadistic things you could ever even fathom, and then sit there and pretend that you didn't do them.
Yeah.
Is that just narcissistic personality disorder combined with so many other disorders?
So many different things, but it could be narcissism, it could be psychopathy, it could be just compartmentalization, but it could also be, it could be mental illness too. It could, be so many things for them. Denial. It could be as simple as denial for them, and then
when their wires are crossed. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah. There is a thing it's a real term. It's prison protected. And, when they're in that environment, they're surrounded with just criminals who, are just like them or worse than them, or just, it's a breeding ground. It's a petri dish of, criminal behavior. So they're kind of, it's social norm, crime inside of a prison, but also they also are not seeing, articles like we are or the internet and that kind of stuff. So they have quote unquote prison protection from like the media and stuff. So they don't get to see it too, which also protects them kind of like from them even confronting it.
Yeah. And they're always comparing themselves. Well, I'm not as bad as that guy. And so, next to me, I may be fucked up and I did, but I know I didn't do as much as this guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And you've even told me that those they have those kind of conversations
all the time. Like a lot of them have read the book about Bittaker Norris, and first thing they'll come back with is at least I'm not as bad as them, or I didn't do this.
Right.
Yeah. So they look at it like a hierarchy.
Hierarchy of monsters.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that Bittaker didn't like the fact that he was a 22 on Stone's scale. He was offended. How could I be 22? I can't be. There's got to be more people worse than me.
And the horrible things he did.
Yeah. The world of serial killers.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the reason I was asking about John Douglas because he actually wished me a happy birthday the other day on Facebook. Yeah. I always forget that he's on my Facebook page. And obviously he's a pioneer of this stuff in the beginning. So, but I think it's funny how your conversation where you would basically say, I wouldn't get engaged.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but just lends to the fact that, you got some sort of white light protecting you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's so much work that you're still doing and so much more to do. It's endless.
Yeah. And with Ing's case, I mean, they're just getting started.
I know.
Yeah. So, yeah. I feel like that one is just getting started. I feel like that one's going to be the next one that's going to be years and years, just like Bittaker Norris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think so.
If he survives that long.
Yeah. He might.
You think so?
Well, if he stays at Vacaville, I think for prison-wise, but who knows?
Has he kind of created his own niche there now?
It seems like he sticks with like the death row inmates there, which seems to be a little form of protection if they stick together. And not too many people know who he is or haven't like put the pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
Since they've disbanded death row, how do they have these guys classified now?
Just death row.
That's it?
Yeah.
They're still death row. So even though there's no death row.
Right. They're still, like classified, condemned, or death row.
Is everybody out of San Quentin now?
I think I've heard they kept two inmates.
That's it?
Out of the, 500 something?
Yeah. So 700, yeah.
700, yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm. One of them had like a full sex change. So I don't know.
If they can put them somewhere else.
Right. So I don't know if that's one of the reasons they kept them there.
Paid for by the taxpayers of California.
Yeah, they got a facelift and everything too.
That's amazing.
Oh my God.
And a boob job.
And did that person kill how many people?
3.
That person killed 3 people.
They were a Power Ranger.
Oh, that was the Power Ranger guy.
Yeah.
You mean from the movie?
Yeah, from the TV series.
He killed 3 people?
Yeah, I remember he was a martial artist. I remember this guy.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, that to me just, I don't know how we justify doing that for someone. It's like,
I don't know.
it's almost like
All right. So
it's a reward
back to the book.
for them.
I don't get the facelift.
I don't either. The facelift is strange to me. But, when you're going through the book and you're analyzing your work, what do you think is your greatest accomplishment with Bittaker?
The greatest accomplishment
For you.
For you.
for me. I mean, I have him giving up Cindy and Andrea.
Yeah.
For me. I mean, there's nothing that could really top that. Just giving that hope back to the families and having like a placement of where we can at least look, even if he's not here. It's he didn't bring that with him to the grave. So getting that before, that'll always be, I think, my biggest accomplishment with Bittaker.
Yeah. I think so too.
Yeah.
That and also just being able to study him for as long as you did.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much wealth just from, just my interviews with him alone. What we could learn about sadism, psychopathy. I mean, if somebody ever wanted to, I have them all transcribed, but I mean, to really go through them and do a deep dive, and I put a lot of it in the book. But I would like to later down do a really academic book on Bittaker and just things and the extractions from him.
Yeah. Because he is a complete study on sadistic behavior.
He really is, yeah.
It's like textbook.
Yeah. Layered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then obviously
Norris too. I mean, I think
Who?
a lot of people, Norris.
Yeah.
He's a really good study, like a case study. Yeah.
Well, you got the hierarchy there. You have Norris and you have Eng. Eng is just, you're just starting with him.
I know.
You're just scratching the surface. What's anything you can share with us with him lately, other than just he's just kind of made his way at Vacaville?
He is just freaking out about the bodies now being tested.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so many victims.
Yeah, he's sweating bullets about that.
Yeah, and just to kind of update, if anybody's been paying attention to the news, they've identified 2 Jane Does or
2 right now. Yeah,
2 right now that were up at the murder house up in what's the name of that county again? Calaveras County.
California,
where we were up there.
Reggie was a whole new unknown.
I know.
Yeah,
Reggie's a total unknown.
Brenda was the mother next door.
Mm-hmm.
Killed
all his neighbors.
Yeah.
It's so psychotic.
We talked to the one he had over for dinner.
I know. That was weird.
Man.
He is so lucky to be alive. Him and
absolutely. Because he was close. his house was like literally across the street.
And he was in there for dinner.
I know.
A couple times.
No, remember he said it was only once.
No,
it was only once. I thought he once.
And then he knew something was off.
They thought something was off because that's how they attacked the other neighbors too. Because
Mm-hmm.
was always hiding in the corner. They said, yeah. I think they said something. I think when him and his wife went over, they must have said something like they had family coming in or something spooked them. Like there was another witness they must have mentioned, like maybe her mother.
I don't know how you still live in that area.
No freaking way. My next door neighbor's a serial killer. Get the hell out of here.
Well, just the fact that all that horrible things that happened in that property.
That energy there is really, really scary.
It's very heavy.
Very heavy. Very heavy. Imagine next door where Brenda's house is now. Remember the woman with all the dogs?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. And there's people living there now.
No.
Yeah.
No. And
yeah. I would have leveled that house, sold the property.
Even the land is all
I know.
Just tormented.
And there's still stuff there.
I know.
There's so much still there. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's good to see you again, Laura. It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah.